Hey babes. So I moved. Thank God. I'm in a much better situation right now. Very grateful for that. I hope you're all well. I just moved today officially, and I have the day off, which is awesome. I'm trying to give myself full permission to relax, although I think I'm going to get a little bit of a workout in before I head out to my friend's farm to go see a concert tonight. But yeah, I think there's always a lesson in everything. And a lot of times when we're feeling burdened by something or we're feeling upset about something, we want to blame and point fingers, and we could be right. You could be dealing with a terrible person or a terrible business or a terrible situation. I've been working really hard to self-assess so that I don't get myself into situations with people who are not good for me. This is not a dating thing. Just leaving a living situation where, somebody just wasn't who they said they were. Very difficult to vet roommates these days. Because you have to take them at their word. I could have done better. That's part of the self-assessment. I should have asked for references. I should have talked to past roommates, because I just got this person's side of the story, and it was always that the roommate was the bad guy. And I can see now why this person cannot, because she really wanted me in for a year. So I did eat the security deposit to get out, but for my mental and emotional well-being, I had to go. And that's all I'll say. I do wish her the best, but there's some stuff there. There's some issues there. Absolutely nobody's perfect, but she doesn't make it an enjoyable experience to live there. And she's got some core wounds that she could work on, but that's not my deal. So anyway, I'm in a much better situation temporarily. Very grateful to be where I'm at, and grateful for good people that have come into my life that have been very helpful and supportive, knowing that I was not in the best situation, because I really held it in and didn't tell anybody for a while. I knew by month 2 of living with this woman that this was not going to go down well, and I lasted 7 months. But yeah, much better. I'm already feeling it. And that's kind of what I wanted to talk about was, being energetically sensitive is really, really challenging. Some people will use the word empath. I think I probably love Simon Sinek because he's always talking about nuances, and Adam Grant is always talking about nuances. If you like Adam Grant and Brene Brown and Simon Sinek, I think it's on Simon Sinek's podcast or maybe Adam Grant's, but the three of them are friends, and they get together as friends and they just talk. And they just launched it, and it was like the sweetest little podcast to listen to, because I do a lot of driving, so the three of them were such a pleasure to listen to. But being sensitive to that is, I've talked about this before, is like walking into a room and being like, ooh, what am I feeling? Like, wow, this is overwhelming. I can pick up on a lot. I remember when I was actively doing Reiki on people, and I would know whose heart was broken, because I would feel that intense grief, and then I would feel like I was gonna start to cry, because I was that person I feel like was holding in the tears. And a lot of times people start crying while they're on the table and you're doing the hands-on healing. And I can walk into your room and be like, that person's super angry. Like, I can feel the anger and then zone in on the person. And so I always say it's a blessing and a curse. It's a great skill to have, because it does help me in avoiding certain people and situations. But it can be a little bit debilitating in work situations when you're constantly going into your place of employment and there's just certain people. I mean, I don't have control over them. I can't clean up that person energetically. So that's really, really difficult. Never mind when you're living with somebody day in and day out. But, those nuances, I think it's partially intuition. It's like a feeling and a hunch. I try not to think that I have somebody sized up so quickly, but I'm almost never wrong at the same time. So it's like there's that fine dance between trusting your intuition and giving people the benefit of the doubt. But, it was interesting because that podcast talked about that with Brene Brown it was Mikhaila Peterson and Brian, what's his last name? He's a really, really funny comedian. And Mikhaila Peterson just had him on her podcast. And they talked about this, giving people the benefit of the doubt too much. Like seeing the good in people to the detriment of your own well-being. And I really have this disease. It's very, very difficult because I truly see the good in people. Even when I get that little nudge of like, I don't know that this person's really well-intentioned, I somehow talk myself out of it. And what Brian was saying on that podcast with Mikhaila Peterson is he's like, I've gotten better, but I still do it, and I probably always will because I can't help myself. He's like, I wouldn't make it through life if I didn't see the best in people. And I feel like that's where it's really hard. I think I fell in love with Robert Greene's teachings a little bit because he talks about like the reality of life is that most people are super Machiavellian. And Jordan Peterson talks about this, like you cannot deny the dark shadow side of most people and humanity. It's there. It's like hovering. And it's hard for me to accept that as a reality. I know there's a lot of people out there who aren't well-intentioned. They don't have your back. There's a lot of great white sharks. And I just, I go in and out of being a great white shark and a minnow. And I'm trying to find the balance, I guess, if there is a balance, of not getting eaten alive. Because my kindness is being taken advantage of and being taken for granted, which was kind of what happened with my living situation. And it's happened to me in friendships, and it's happened to me in intimate relationships. And it's like, I always say to people, like, why are you making me be mean? Why are you making the bitch come out in me? I don't want to be a mean person. I don't want to be harsh with you. I don't want to go there. But I have to get to this place where, like, do you understand that I am very kind, but I do not take shit? And like, why do you want the cat claws to come out? I don't understand why people push other people to that brink. I have such a deep appreciation for any type of kindness that's extended to me. I hold so many people in high esteem to a detriment. And it's something that I really need to remedy and fix. I think it's almost problematic that I really see the best in people. I don't necessarily believe that first impressions are the correct impression or that, should be that lasting impression. I think sometimes you meet people and they're just having a shitty off day. But I've also done that, made an excuse for that person, and then it turned out that they were just really Machiavellian and they were really just a shitty person. But that's okay. Because we're not gonna get around the fact that there's dark and light. We're just not gonna get around it. So I wanted to talk about that. I often say that you can't sink so deep into your own compassion for the other in detriment of your own well-being, so that you're now you jumped into the well with the other person, right? You boosted them out and now you're stuck in the well. And how many times have you been in this situation where that person's like, thanks, see ya, bye. There's no reciprocity, right? Your kindness, all that energy, all that effort, is not reciprocated. And so I've been saying this for like 2 years, and it's something I'm still working on. I might have to work on this for the rest of my life, and I might have to make peace with that. But really finding the relationships, and I mean all relationships, where there's reciprocity, where people care about you as much as you care about them. And I'm not saying this to toot my own horn. Actually, it pissed me off. I might have talked about this in another video. I had a colleague who I really respected. She was a great mentor when I worked in a counseling center in higher ed for a year. And when I moved to South Carolina, I used her as a reference. And she called me up and she said, when they asked me what I thought your weaknesses were, I want you to hear this from me. And she said, you know what your biggest weakness is? And I was like, what? And she said, you care too much. And I was like, that's what you told them? And she was like, yeah. And I was like, that's what you think? And she's like, yeah, you care too much. It's funny because in other ways, I don't care what people think of me, but I care so much about people that are in my circle. And it's almost to a detriment. And, it's something I think a lot of people struggle with. If you are born with innate compassion and empathy. Do I believe everybody's born with it? No. I can tell you my oldest daughter did not have a ton of compassion and empathy. Her life her personal circumstances have humbled her, and you can't help but become more empathetic and compassionate when life kicks your ass a little bit. And so she had to learn the hard way. But I do think empathy and compassion could be taught. But for people like me, and my mom had a high level of empathy and compassion. I think my grandmother did too. I think a lot of women in my family have enormous amounts of compassion and empathy, and I've seen it with some of the men in my family. And, that can be weaponized. And I think it's something that we really need to be careful about. And the other thing I wanted to talk about was, because my life has been so stressful. I mean, I'm not complaining. I never share anything for like condolences or sympathy. That's not helpful. It's been really, really stressful. My cortisol levels have been flipping high. I've not slept well in months, literally. There are nights that I slept in my car in a parking lot, trying to get a better night's sleep than I would being in the house that I was in. And so the last 3 months have been really, really hard and super, super stressful. And I'm very blessed and lucky that I have a skill set and the tools to endure things like this with way more grace and integrity than when I was a kid. And of course, but I was a temper fitter. I had a temper. I had a really short circuit. I think a lot of that was diet. My diet was shit as a kid, and I'm super energetically sensitive. So there was a lot of hostility and chaos around me. Not all the time, but often enough. And I think I was super sensitive to that. And I think my diet played a big role. And then I just, I had a father who would fly off the handle. And there was not a lot of emotional intelligence in my home. So I never really learned the skills. And I'm not bashing my parents, because these conversations weren't really around. You know what I mean? No one was really talking about emotional intelligence and communication and those types of skill sets and mindset. A lot of that information just didn't exist. So I know they did the best that they could. But now I can tell you that when your life feels so out of control, the only thing you can do is focus on what you can control. And what I could control is my reactions and my impulses and my perception and my perspective, and facing forward as much as possible, and always working towards optimizing my well-being in the moment. So it was like, what could I do? I can go for a walk. Maybe fasting right now isn't the best idea for me because my cortisol levels are through the roof, and fasting can throw off your cortisol levels to begin with. And although I was like a super faster, I actually started eating more food than I have in a really long time. Part of that was probably emotional eating, to be honest. I started hitting the weights again. And I lost my pranayama practice for a bit, and I started getting back to that. And so it was really just focusing on things like that, doing more yoga than I was doing, and getting back to my creativity, because I felt really stuffed down and stifled. When you're living with someone, or you're in the energy of, it could be at work, it could be in your friend circle, with someone or someones who are controlling and manipulative, and they're gaslighting, it's very difficult. These people do not realize how toxic they are. And because this is not my first rodeo, I felt like I handled it and myself in the situation really, really well. So I'm proud of myself for that. But some of the things that I did was I literally was writing out my strategy. Like, what's my exit plan? What's my strategy? What's my backup plan? I was writing down, what can I control? What can't I control? I was writing down all the ways that I could move towards wellness. I was writing down new goals, and I was trying to visualize my life and myself outside of this situation. And what am I calling in, and where do I want to go? And these are things that I talk to my kids about all the time. My kids are both kind of going through something right now. And I try not to give advice unless they're asking. And when they ask, it's always what I'm saying here. Write it down. Getting in writing. The written word is so powerful. You're setting that intention. You're putting it out there. It's not enough to talk about it. Get it down on paper. Cost benefit analysis. Like, my one daughter is struggling because she wants to make a change, and I am a little bit more impulsive than my kids, and that might drive them a bit crazy, but I follow my impulses and I'm pretty much on point. Even if I get myself in a pickle, I'm able to turn things around pretty quickly. Maybe because I'm resourcul, or my life circumstances had to teach me to be resourceful and more self-reliant. I have one kid, she's such a strategist, and she's so much in her rational brain, and I think that's great and it's smart. But if she was a little more impulsive, I think she would almost have herself out of a situation that she's in, that she's been in for way too long and just can't seem to turn the corner. And one of the things that she said to me is, I'm not ready. And that's kind of what I needed to hear to back off, in terms of when she was asking advice. What I was saying to her was, I was pushing the gas pedal way too fast for her. And so I suggested a cost benefit analysis. Like, what is the benefit of staying in this situation? What is it going to cost me to stay in this situation? Because when you're becoming a shell of a person and you are losing your core essence and your vitality, nothing is worth that. Nothing is worth it. I don't care. Nothing is worth it. If you are in and around people or a job or something that is a parasite and sucking the life out of you, it is not worth it. You know what the amazing thing is? When you move out of that situation, when you get out of that relationship, when you change jobs, everything changes. Have you ever noticed that? Comment too if you've been in that situation. Like, I could tell you, finally moving out of West Asheville, so much shit is already opening up in my life. There's been so many changes, because I was just living in a situation with somebody that was just completely holding me back from being my authentic self and being more successful. So I get that I wanted to leave the situation I was in months ago. I'm 7 months in, and by month 2, I was like, this is not a good situation for me. So, 5 months of having to be in that energy in the last couple months were really, really tough. But, so I get it. We all just can't get up and turn our lives around in a nanosecond, or make these impulsive decisions and just think it's just, always going to work out. I believe it always will, but you might make things a little bit harder for yourself in the moment if you don't have some type of strategy. But there's also something to be said for jumping without a safety net. I think you really just need to be in the right frame of mind for that, though. Clearly, by one kid isn't, because she's like, I'm not ready. And that's when I was like, do a cost benefit analysis. You know, when you're dealing with a really left-brained kid, that stuff is vital. And I take all that from my Smart Recovery training, because I became a certified Smart Recovery facilitator when I was working in the addiction field. And all that stuff is based on rational emotive behavior therapy, REBT, which is an offshoot of cognitive behavioral therapy, CBT. And it's about getting yourself out of the primal brain, which addiction, you're just in your primal brain, and getting people back into the prefrontal cortex. So what I like about those meetings is that you're really getting into the rational brain. You're giving your clients homework, and you're doing these things to try to get things down. So you're actually giving them worksheets, and you're giving them homework, and they're getting things down on pen and paper, black and white, so you can see it in front of you. And so I use those tools with her, where my youngest, and if you don't realize that you have to parent your kids differently, you might want to look into that, because you can't parent your kids the same. They're just two different constitutions. So the way I parent my oldest and the way I parent my youngest is completely different. So my youngest is just a different beast, and I don't always have to do those things. We can talk in different ways and strategize in different ways and problem solve in different ways. But that's really what I wanted to talk about is, also the foods I was eating, because I started emotionally eating. And really it was definitely, I think we're all emotional eaters, but for me, I really have a handle on my diet. So I was like, oh my gosh, I'm like never wake up hungry, and I'm waking up starving, but I'm also working an 8-hour shift at a restaurant where you can't take a breath for a second because we're so rockin' busy, getting home late, but my natural biorhythms have me up early, and then I'm living in a stressful situation, and I'm not eating for that whole 8-hour shift. So my last meal is at like 2 o'clock in the afternoon. And again, I'm a big faster, but I'm moving my body that whole time, and we're learning new things because the restaurant just opened. So I'm working my brain, I'm moving my body, lifting heavy shit back in the kitchen. And then I'm getting home, and I'm either starving or I'm waking up starving. And then I just started craving things that I haven't craved, and I started wanting to eat things that I'm allergic to and I can't eat, and I'm trying to eat it, and I'm like making it worse. So I think like focusing on the things that are super healthy for you, really trying to find ways to get deep rest, which has been difficult for me, but that's why I have off today. And I really want to go out and work out and weight train right now. And then there's a part of me like, just, take a chill pill and relax and just luxuriate in your day off. Just reading a book or journaling or just chilling out and listening to music, hanging out and letting your pet lay in your lap, like all of these simple things, or moving your body vigorously, because a lot of that helped me through this was the weight training, just getting out my frustrations and my anxiety over the situation that I was in, but always moving that needle towards wellness and staying forward focused. So it was like, I know there's something on the other side of this. And, what can I do to stay hopeful? What can I do to stay forward facing? And a lot of that is like faith over fear. Because there were times that I was like, my anxiety levels were going through the roof, and it was like, shit, I even had to, dial back the caffeine, and that's just yerba mate and green tea. But I was like, all this caffeine is just exacerbating my cortisol levels, even though it's like healthier caffeine, and not like a Red Bull. So there was a lot of things that I had to apply. And it almost did feel like work. The fact that people think, well, I don't want to have to do all these things. I don't want it to feel like work. But is that realistic? Do you know what I mean? Like, how do you get better at something? You have to work at it. It's not just going to happen. And all the people into the manifestation, you still have to work. There are times in your life where things are just going to come to you without thought, without trying. But I don't know anybody who manifests specific things in their life and they didn't put some effort into it, or there's some action that needs to be taken. But that's a whole nother video on all the cupola in the spiritual communities. But anyway, I hope this helps. because I know that there's a lot of people that get themselves into these situations. We all have these heightened times of stress in our life. You know, when I was living in Brevard, I was in a super relaxed state and things were a little bit easier. And then, you know, now things amped up in West Asheville and got a little bit harder. Ebb and flow. Ebb and flow, it's just life, you know. Learning to go with the flow is not easy. I think accepting where you're at in your life is very important. And then again, creating that plan, coming up with an exit strategy if you need to leave something, whatever you need to do, get it in writing, face forward. So you're not looking back in that rear view mirror because you're not going that way, right? So what can I do to get myself headed in the right direction? What are the steps that I could take to keep myself headed in the right direction? So I hope that helps. Love ya.